Good morning, everyone. I'm Kris Hughston. I am an independent business owner and first vice on the Chamber Board of Directors. I'd like to introduce our sponsors, Scotiabank, TD, and Electra. Thanking all of you for your support on behalf of the Barrie Chamber of Commerce. I would like to thank each of you for watching today. When it became clear that we wouldn't be able to run our Women in Business Awards program in the regular format, our committee got together to rethink our approach. We know that through this pandemic, women have been among the most impacted. As they are typically the primary caregivers, they were most often the ones having to work from home with their children learning remotely, or even stepping away from the workforce altogether. Those still working on site were likely to be on the front lines, providing essential services for our community. This pandemic may actually significantly set back the process and progress of women have made in the workplace in recent decades. And we wanted to bring to light the many positive changes that Barrie women in business have seen firsthand over the years. To this end, we invite Donna Douglas and Barb Richards, pillars of our business community, and I'd like to say matriarchs of our business community, to get together for a cup of coffee and chat about how things used to be and the work they did to help encourage more women to become entrepreneurs and leaders in Barrie. Before I hand the Zoom over to Donna and Barb, I'd like to thank and acknowledge our gratitude to the 2021 Women in Business sponsors, Scotiabank, Grant Thornton LLP, the City of Barrie, Invest Barrie, TD Canada Trust, Electra Utilities, Siva Creative, Big 101.1, Fresh 93.1 Radio, Rock 95, Cool FM, Barrie 360, Barriston Law, Downtown Barrie, and Baker Studio. Thank you all so very much.
Scotiabank is proud to support the 2021 Barrie Women in Business Celebration, which recognizes the leadership and success of women in our business community. Through the Scotiabank Women Initiative, we assist women who are leading businesses to support their sustainability and growth, while also addressing an important social challenge. We believe in empowering women by prioritizing equality, challenging existing stereotypes, and helping women take their business to the next level. As a Scotiabank business banking leader, I believe there has never been a better time to be a woman in business, especially in our great city of Barrie. And Scotiabank is here to support you.
Hi everyone. Innovative Automation is pleased to be a sponsor for this event, an event that will recognize and honor the amazing accomplishments of women making a difference across our great community. This event will encourage ambition, empower confidence, and inspire new female leaders now and into the future. To all of the young future leaders taking part today, I'd like to share some advice. As a 2019 recipient of the Women in Business Award, I advise you to never stop learning, never stop challenging yourself, put yourself out of your comfort zone often, and you will grow. Recognize your strengths and use them every day. But most of all, be really happy. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Ruby, Area Manager, Small Business Banking, TD Bank. TD is proud to celebrate women entrepreneurs and champion women in the workplace. This year especially, we recognize the resiliency of all women and are even more committed to propelling success for women at all career stages. On behalf of our staff who work in Barrie, a shout out and kudos to all the women in business for their hard work, dedication, skill, and expertise in the workplace. Thank you and congratulations.
At Electra, our commitment to gender equality is not just something we say.
Gender equality is ingrained as part of our values.
When you embed equality into our corporate culture.
And when your company's culture celebrates diversity.
You inspire the next generation of young women
who will understand that you can't be what you can't see.
Which is why Electra is dedicated to strengthening our team and building a more diverse and welcoming workforce.
Means more young women can inspire to be the next generation of leaders.
Happy
International Women's
Day.
Happy
International
Women's Day.
Happy
International Women's Day.
And now I'd like to introduce Donna and Barb. Before launching her own communications business in 1978, Donna Douglas was a journalist, a 20-year part-time teacher with Georgian College's School of Continuous Learning. Donna brings to her clients a vast community network, the experience of having walked the walk, and an unparalleled care and support for the small business owner. She is also a founder of the popular Barrie Business Women's Council. Since 1995, Donna has been directly involved in a startup of over 1,500 businesses in the Barrie area. She believes when entrepreneurs take time to learn how to run and grow their businesses, they move to the winner's circle. They eliminate the chance that they'll become one of the nation's failure statistics. In the late 1970s, Barb Richards was helping individuals leaving the correctional system and developing programs at Georgian College for women entering or returning to the workforce and training for non-traditional occupations. In 1986, she became one of the very first female auctioneers in Canada in a largely male-dominated industry that still hasn't changed much. Since establishing her business, Barb has helped thousands of people through often challenging times, a move, downsizing, selling an estate, etc. She is not afraid of technology and thinks that about the future in a creative and imaginative way. With a positive energy and enthusiasm, Barb is a supporter of women, sharing her insights with compassion. What possessed you and motivated you to be entrepreneurs and get into business for yourselves for the first time? Donna, I'll let you start.
Well, I was, at the time that I started my business, I had quit my job as editor of the Banner, which I loved and was really good at. It was a wonderful job, but I was going to have a baby, and I knew, even though mat leave had just been mandated for 6 weeks, I knew I could not do that job and balance being the kind of mom I wanted to be. And so starting a business made sense for me. I had no idea that there would be hurdles. So I started by doing corporate newsletters for Canadian head offices of American corporations. And that was 1978. And Barrie was full of Canadian head offices of American corporations, many, many, many. And then in 1988 with free trade, they all died. But for 10 years, it was a very big part of my business.
So you started off primarily writing?
Writing, designing, taking pictures, everything I'd been doing really for the newspaper. So I was ideal for a corporation because they could hire me and they didn't have to hire a committee that included a photographer and a writer and a designer. I could just take it all right to press. So it was really easy for me to say to a Cooper Tools or a General Tire or Rockwell International or any of those head offices, I can be a one-stop shop for you. And it was an easy sell, really.
And that was going to be my question. How well was that received from, because I'm sure back then most of the higher ups were men. So how was that?
Well, they were all men, but interesting. My very first job producing a newsletter was for the Barrie Chamber.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I produced the newsletter for a few years and won an international award for it. And yeah, you didn't know that, but there was a newsletter that went out every month. It was 11/17, folded in a funny way, orange and blue. I can still see it all. And I, attended meetings and wrote about issues. But I was doing that for about 10 publications and teaching at Georgian at night too.
Wow, busy.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have
now? You mean?
When you were in business.
Well, when I started, I just had one little guy running around in a walker back when walkers had wheels.
When you were allowed, yeah.
Yeah, when we were considered smart enough to allow our children to run around with wheels. And then we had our second child. And I talk about that when I get to the Barrie Business Women's Council. I'll talk about that. And then our third child arrived much later. So we have 3 and 6 grandchildren.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Barb, where was your career? Where did it start in the whole entrepreneurial world?
Well, my first job was selling worms with my brother. We went in a partnership because we lived on the lake and the fishermen would come and buy the worms from us. But the deal seemed to be that I would pick the dew worms at night after a storm and he would get the money. So that was my first lesson. Don't go in business with your brother. And so jumping forward then, I was really lucky enough to get introduced to many segments of society through, I worked at Canada Employment Centre. I was a correctional officer at the Barrie Jail when it was at the location that's there now. And I worked at Canada Employment Centre. And then I got to Georgian College, and that was when I was introduced to a variety of people. But one of the classes I had was I designed many classes. For the first one was women returning to the workforce. Now this was in the early 70s, right? And so their husbands were saying to them, well, I don't know why you're going to this class. If you're going to work, nothing has to change around here. Like you're still going to be doing the dishes and the housework and the kids better be taken care of and whatever. Nothing's changing, except now you're going to go to work on top of everything else. And I'll never forget one lady who had 6 kids and she had to take them to 3 different places before she came to class at 9 o'clock. You know, they did a day's work before they came to work. And then we looked at some of the careers that are out there, and some of the women said, well, we'd like to be a plumber, or we'd like to learn to be apprentice to be an electrician and things like that. So I designed a course called Women in Non-Traditional Occupations, because that's what they called it then instead of trades, because it was non-traditional then. When we approached employers, they said, no, we can't have females in here. We don't have a washroom for females, and we don't have a change room for females. And besides, they might get pregnant, you know, like pregnant, and then there goes all their apprenticeship. So there was a lot of things that happened with that. But Georgian College was absolutely wonderful at producing programs and encouraging me to do things with women long before it was time to do that. And so did all of those sorts of things. And then I was working at the college, and I thought, my husband and I used to always go out and do different things, and our family was always involved in things. And I must say right now, if my family, my children had not been so great, I never could have done all the things that I did. I remember my kids saying to me, we have the weirdest family on the street. And they said, and I said, what do you mean we have the weirdest family on the street? He said, because we have to do chores and no one else has to.
Oh, poor babies.
Yeah. Well, they thanked me later when they all knew how to cook and do everything like that.
Yeah.
So then while I was doing that at Georgia, and my husband and I decided to do something different on a weekend. We went to an auction sale and I got hooked. And I thought, where am I going to learn to be an auctioneer? And so I went to an auction school in Ontario because I wanted to learn Canadian law, not go to the States. That's where the big schools were. And I came back being an auctioneer. I thought I was being an auctioneer. It was really interesting. I decided to call my company A Touch of Class Auctions because the men's auctions were such a mess when I went to look at them. I couldn't believe it. I thought I had to do some things neat and display items and do all of those sorts of things, right? So they look good. And so then I got all the men auctioneers were sort of patting me on the head like, oh, that's cute. You want to be an auctioneer. Why do you go out and get all this stuff?
Woman, right?
Yeah. You know, why don't you just go out and get the stuff and I'll sell it? And I said, are you kidding me? That's the best part. 90% of the work's been done by the time you start to sell at a live auction.
Right.
So anyway, I went to auction school, and it wasn't long after I went to auction school that Krista joined we'd started A Touch of Class Auctions. Krista's been with me almost every step of the way, and I could not have done as much as I did without her. And it's just absolutely amazing where the auction company has taken us. And Donna, I remember meeting you at the Barrie Business Women's, but I'd seen you before that, and I knew about you at the Advance, and you'd done a couple of interviews with Mental Health Barrie. I just thought, oh, this is one sharp lady. She just knows what she's doing. And then I found out not only was she sharp and smart and everything else, she was a really nice person, you know. So, and I love talking to her. So, you know, that was my start into A Touch of Class auctions. I worked part-time doing that. Well, Krista worked full-time doing it.
Right.
And that's how I got started.
And it's funny because that's exactly where I met you, was at one of your auctions at the old Continental Inn.
Yeah.
Back in 1990.
I remember, didn't we have an all-night auction, or you and you wanted us to have an all-night auction? Yeah.
Brought each of my children. I would show up pregnant, then with a baby, and you'd say, "Oh, you had the baby," and you guys became like almost family to me. It was pretty fun.
Well, it is family at an auction sale, because they're anxious when Krista had her baby. She wasn't even a week old, and she was at her first auction.
Yeah.
You know, like people want to know that they become your family, and that's what's so great about the auction industry. And let me tell you, there were not any women in that were running their own auction company. Any women that were working in the auction industry had a partner. Their husband was the auctioneer, and they filled in sometimes.
So you were the only woman running the show.
Yeah.
Very
I
cool.
was the only one running our own auction. Yeah.
Very cool. So what kind of challenges did you have, or either of you run into while you were trying to, start your businesses and kind of really make your way into that whole male predominantly world, if you want to call it?
Maybe Donna, you could start at it. Yeah.
Well, I kept my nighttime teaching job at Georgian. I was teaching in the School of Continuous Learning. I was teaching communications, which I started doing in '73. But I used the money from that to fund my business, because you couldn't get a loan. You couldn't get a credit card in your name. You couldn't get a business phone in your house. So my family all had to be trained to answer the house line like a business. You know, you've reached Donna Douglas's line. That's what they said when they were 4 and 5 and 7. And
so why was that? They just didn't have them, or
the whole concept of home-based work just didn't exist.
Okay.
You know, it just
didn't. Women had to have someone sign a loan. If you made a loan application, your husband had to sign.
Get the credit card in your husband's name. But
really?
You couldn't get a credit card in your name.
Wow.
No matter how good you were or how much money you had in the bank, or so wow. And you know, it's interesting, and this is not a slam on TD at all, because they've been so good about the women in business entire production. But I bet you a lot of people who work for TD today would be surprised to learn that there was not a women's washroom in the executive level of the TD Tower in downtown Toronto until 1992.
Get out of town.
Yeah, 1992 was when they needed.
That doesn't even seem that long ago, really.
Well, it is in a way.
I know, but it doesn't seem that long ago.
I know. But it just in terms of looking at what were some of the hurdles, I don't know about you, Barb, but I don't think I was even aware that they were hurdles.
No, I wasn't either.
You know, like I wasn't aware that, geez, I can't get a credit card in my own name. I was aware that, geez, I got to put this thing on a press before I can bill my client. So I guess I'll use my money from teaching at Georgian to do that, and then I'll pay that back.
Right.
To my business.
You found alternatives.
Yeah, you just sort of found solutions, you know.
Yep.
And so I didn't go into it with anger. I do remember a man, I can't remember which man it was, but when I was pregnant, and I'd been editor at the Banner for a long time at this point, and we had incredible success. And he said to me, "So are you coming back to work after your baby's born?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to do something different." And he said, "But you've got such a good brain. You should be using it." I said,
"Nice.
I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it raising my child. And I'll do something else too," because I was so conscious. I looked at this little baby. He was very cute. And, in his walker, zooming around. And I said out loud to him when he was about 6 months old, I said, "If I don't find something to do, I will never be able to let you go." and I knew how unhealthy I was going to get if I put all of my energy into him. It would be very not good. And so that was really the emphasis for building something that I could build. And I learned so much about just managing life. Like, do you remember, Barb, in the 70s, Anne Locke was working so hard to get enough funding to start the Raggedy Ann daycare centers, and there was no daycare.
You don't hear of them anymore.
Pardon?
I said you don't hear of them anymore.
Well, they had
Raggedy
to
Ann
change
daycare.
the name. The centers are still there, but she got caught in a conflict by using the name Raggedy Ann. And but they're all still there, everything she built, but she was busy trying to develop daycare so people like Barb and I had somewhere for our kids. But really, in those days, you just, you know, when Benji was 2 and 3, he had a little briefcase and he came with me, and he learned how to behave, and people were good to him, and I just made it work, you know. And he benefited, for sure. He benefited because his behavior had to measure up to a certain standard, but he benefited too. You know, I bought a national magazine in 1985, and at one point, I guess he was about 14, and he was very seriously ski racing. I mean, that was his life. And I said, I'm going down to the Molson Center in Toronto today to meet the national ski team that's going to the Olympics. Would you like to come?
Yeah.
Would you like to come? You know, so there were lots.
His eyes were like saucers, right?
Yeah. But there were lots of benefits. Your kids had to perform.
Yeah.
They are all really good with people and answering the phone and making commitments and all of that. And that's just because they had to do that so I could do what I did.
And I bet you they don't even realize that a lot of that brought them to where they are today.
Well, they're all self-employed. So.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
We're always a bit suspicious if they bring home, when they brought home prospective spouses, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a job or do you have your own business?
Your own business. No kidding.
I'll tell you one thing, because this is a tip for other women who own their own businesses. And I did this from the beginning. When I was writing for a number of consumer and trade publications, so the jewelry industry in Toronto, the cosmetic industry there, I had a lot of clients I was writing for, as well as these newsletters. And whenever a check would come in for a magazine article or for any payment of any kind, I would take both kids with me to the bank. And I would put my paycheck in my business account, but I would withdraw 2 1%. So 2% of what I had made, but I would withdraw it in 2 amounts.
Yep.
And then I would give it to the kids and say, your behavior every time you answer the phone, or when I'm doing an interview and your behavior changes, you are helping me make this money and I want to share it with you.
Nice.
And then they had a save, spend, share. So they could take that money and divide it into 3, and a third of it they could spend. So that I just always did that with them. And there wasn't some woman in business who taught me how to do that. So I'm sharing it because maybe it will be useful for somebody right now, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's great learning skills, even going forward for them.
Yeah. Your kids really help you. If you're running a business out of your home and your phone rings at 8 at night and they are not screaming in the background, they're helping you.
I agree. Been there, done that too.
Yeah.
Now, Barb, what obstacles did you run into?
Well, I worked part-time, except I worked at the college too. But by the time I started working, I had 4 children in 7 years, and 3 girls and a boy.
Barb.
Yeah. I didn't know what was causing them, Donna. I thought it was green apples. Anyway, there was 4 of them in 7 years. And when I went out to work more on a full-time basis, and when I started my auction business, they all helped, right? And then my daughter's fiance at that time, he's now an engineer with York Region. He would help set up. Everybody helped do things, or they held things up, or they did things.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, my husband was the only person I guess we fired 3 or 4 times. But other than that, by giving misleading information to the consigners. So anyway, because I had them and because we really had a good family life while we were working and doing all of those things. My husband worked very, very hard, and the kids were good, and we would have weekly meetings with the kids. And we would then talk about anything that was bothering them that week or anything they thought they would like to do. And they were given chores, which they said made us the weirdest family on the street. And so someone would be responsible. We used to do it day around, and then that didn't work because if you didn't do your dishes one day, the next person was responsible for them. So we did it for a week at a time. And then we would have a meeting and we would talk about all that. And Krista would bring lists of how she wanted the laundry sorted prior to bringing it down for wash it. And when Donna, when you and I met at the Business Women's, do you remember? We laughed and laughed because you said, "Oh, where did all those socks go?" And I said, "Donna, just throw them all in the box and the kids will sort them out. They'll find the socks. First one to the basket gets the best socks." And that was such a great idea. And
we talked about darning socks too. I remember one night you said, "Oh, Donna, I've got socks that are this big to darn, and my children are in their 20s."
Yeah, I remember darning some for my husband. He couldn't even walk in them.
But here's the thing: you're talking about meetings. We did meetings. We had what are your commitments? When do you need to be picked up? Who's going to do that? And if it wasn't on the board, it didn't happen. And if you forgot to put your soccer practice on the board, well, that was your problem. But you know what? We're all better for that, right?
Yes.
Oh, I agree. My kids, I think my kids are way better.
Organizational.
They all know the importance of working, and they all know the importance of taking care of family and raising your family. And
and the house doesn't belong to the mother. The house belongs to everybody.
Family.
We're all responsible for cleaning it and caring for it, right?
Yeah, we all live there.
Yeah. So I think we had a very similar set of ways of operating.
Yeah.
So while the auction company started, as I said, the male auctioneers were saying, "Well, I'll auction and do whatever." Well, then I got busier than any of them. And that was when Krista joined the company, and she worked really hard at that. And one of the things that was really interesting while developing the auction company was how quickly people accepted a woman into the industry. Or I would go out and visit people and they say, "Who's the auctioneer? Like, was it your husband?" And I'd say, "No, it's me." And women embraced that. Most of our clients were elderly women who had lost their spouse or whatever. And so I certainly could relate to them and talk to them and do things that would make them trust me and know that I would want to do the very best that I could do for them. And Krista has that attitude.
I can imagine, because when you would go into somebody's house where if they were downsizing and exactly that, you would have that understanding and compassion of the sentimental attachment with a lot of their materials and stuff that they had in their home, and help them be able to part with them, if you want to call it.
Oh, you're right. You're right. And so many of the women would go through they wanted to go down memory lane with us while they give the things. And sometimes it was just too sentimental for them to send. And I would say, you go through with your family and find out what you want and what's really important, because what you think one of your children might like may not be the favorite thing at all. I just out of curiosity asked one of my grandsons, Taylor, the other day, I said, "What's in the house that you really like?" Now I have to explain to you that Taylor is 6'7", and so he's pretty tall. His first deal was getting taller than Nana. Anyway, I said to him, "What is something that you'd like out of the house that, and he said, "You know what I want more than anything?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "The stained glass lamp or chandelier that you have when I come into the house, because I always hit my head on it."
Ah, that's funny.
I never would have thought that he cared about that at all. So, we help people, and now they have downsizing people, and they have this and they have that. And Chris has taken us into the new technology and internet auctions and all of those sorts of things. And it just is so different for women today. I think that it's different. They have different challenges than we had. just because so much is expected.
So what do you think that is different now than it was then, as far as the challenges?
Well, because it was a new idea, not only to their husbands,
right,
but to them, to society, and to anyone out there in the public. They weren't used to seeing women do everything. I bet sometimes they were surprised when Donna would show up and she was running a newspaper.
Yeah,
you know, like, really. And Donna was the Barrie Advance. I mean, she was everywhere getting stories and doing all those sorts of things I used to love. And I always read her columns and
same here.
Was doing, and she helped us at hospice, and she said to me, Barb, put away all those books. I'll tell you how you're going to market hospice and how you're going to do that. And so Donna just always has that common sense.
The other thing I'm thinking about that I think is worth talking about is the founding of the Barrie Business Women's Council, because that was a Chamber of Commerce initiative.
Correct.
That's how Barb and I met, but that's how we met most other business women in Barrie.
Right.
So I think we should talk about that. And I also think we should talk about technology, because technology is going to impact women who are in business today more than they realize, but it also threw a real curveball to Barb and I and anyone else our age. When we started with carbon paper, typewriters, no call waiting or call answer, no services like that, no cell phone, no email. When you got in your car and went somewhere, you didn't have a cell phone that you were going to take with you. You had to solve your problem. And so there's so much technology that we have coped with, but the technology coming down the pipe for women who are in business today is huge. And this pandemic, in many ways, has fast forwarded women in business in a huge way to be able to do business remotely and online and through Zoom. And, you know, it's just pushed everything really quickly. But the Barrie Business Women's Council, if I can just go back.
Yep, that's actually my next topic was that.
In 1985, which will seem to a lot of people in sitting on this meeting today, 1985 seems like a century ago. To Barb and I, it seems like last month.
I graduated from high school.
In 1985, if you were a woman in business in Barrie, you had nowhere that you could make a contribution to your community unless you wanted to become a Rotary Ann, that's a wife of a Rotarian, or a Lady Lion, a wife of a Lion, or a Lady Shriner. And that's not to put any of those positions down, because they're all important. But as the owner of a business, you could not make a contribution. And 15 of us met at the old, do you remember the Molsons, the little building that they had that we used for chamber announcements and dignitary? And we met there. That was our founding meeting location. There were 15 of us. That's where I met Michelle Tuck, who I'm still in contact with all the time. And the discussion was there a need and an interest in an organization for women in business in Barrie? Yes, indeed, there was. And for the first year, we met once a month as like a meeting, sitting in rows of chairs. And, you know, and it was at 80 Bradford Street, and we would have a guest speaker. And I don't know, it wasn't doing a lot for me. And I said at one of these meetings, you know, if I'm going to get tarted up and put on makeup and get a babysitter and come out to these meetings, I would like to have dinner. I would like to have a social aspect, an opportunity to do business, to find out about other businesses, to see how we can support each other, and have a guest speaker. And of course, if you bring that sort of idea up, then you get to carry it out. And so I went to Mel Bray, who owned Michael and Marion's at the time.
Okay.
Remember this, Barb? And I said, would you do a meal, same meal for us as a group of people for $30, which was an outrageous low price for what he was doing in those days, and close the restaurant, and we'll guarantee you 30 people. We'll pay you for 30 people. I was really out on a limb because I didn't know whether 10 would go, you know. Anyway, we filled the place. We had a guest speaker. We went every month instead of every 2 months, and we started to grow. And soon we couldn't go to Michael and Marion's anymore. It was too small. And then we hired a caterer, and we went to a catering place. And in short order, like maybe a year or a year and a bit after we started the dinner meetings, we had 180 members.
Wow.
It was big. And Shannon Marchant was our treasurer, and Colette Mesdag, remember, she took pictures of everybody and made a booklet of who the members were. Right. And we just, we were hungry, I think. We were hungry to be able to sit down with other women who were also coping with the same issues.
Right.
You know, yeah. And it just became the light of your month to have that and have a really good speaker. But here's the most important thing that we did. Once or twice a year, we opened our meeting to high school girls.
Oh.
And there'd be 2 girls at each table, because we were producing what in our lifetime as high school students would have been impossible. We could never have walked into a room full of women in business, ever. No. So we wanted to provide that opportunity for those girls to see this is possible. This woman owns a furnace company. This woman owns a painting contracting company. This woman, you know, for the girls in high school, it was just like these windows to opportunity opened, because they were sitting at dinner with people who could become their mentors.
Very intimidating, I'm sure, for some of them.
Well, it was one of the most important things we did as a group, in my opinion. When I look back, I mean, we served ourselves, we all benefited, we did some trade shows, we chose the best businesswoman of the year. We probably were the precursor of the Women in Business Awards, really. Right. But the thing that was the most important, I think, was that we opened the doors on a room that girls could never have gone into before.
Now, what happened to that group?
Well, interesting. In the 90s, the service clubs opened to women.
Yes.
I was the first woman in the Kiwanis Club.
There you go. Yeah.
I am a proud Rotarian.
Several women from Business Women's Council were the first women asked to be invited to join service clubs. And so all of a sudden you had another place where you could make a contribution, you know, and a contribution that was more than just in Barrie, that had a provincial body and a national body. And my personal belief is that that's what happened. Membership dwindled and dwindled and dwindled until it really, nobody was going anymore.
Fizzled out because there was other things.
Very hard to watch that, but it was exciting to see the service club ground get leveled, you know, to have a more level playing field. Yeah.
That's huge.
Donna was a leading force with that.
Sorry, Barb?
You cut out.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that Donna was a leading force in that whole thing that happened with the Barrie business women, and she doesn't ever take so much as a little tiny bit of credit, and she just is so vital to this community and was a driving force during women changing from what they thought they could do to what they were going to do in the future. And for me, I never thought there was anything that women couldn't do that men were doing. I umpired senior men's ball games, and I did all of those sorts of things, never thinking that I wouldn't be able to do them. And then into the auction business, where still it's less than 10% women who are auctioneers.
Well, look at 10%, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm thinking about Shannon being the treasurer and how we had to set up a little table like we were just learning as we went, and we thought we better give receipts. People are spending $30 on coming to the dinner. We better give receipts, right? So I had just gotten my very first computer, 1985.
Wow.
With clip art. Remember clip art?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I said, I'll be the secretary. I don't have time to do this, but I'll be the secretary. And so I did a lot of learning with the computer to be able to produce these notes and hit print many times and put them in envelopes and mail them out to people. Email, right? So I said to Shannon, we're going to need receipts. I'm going to, on my new computer, I'm going to figure out how to make a receipt. You couldn't just go to Google and go receipt, and choose from 200
programs. You had to create it,
design it, you know. So I thought, well, okay, I'll do 3 a page, you know, that'll be economical, and we'll end it with Business Women's Guts, and Shannon can sign it, and there'll be a place for how much they paid. I think this will work. So I printed them all, and then I thought, well, we don't want to be sitting there with scissors cutting across the page. So I went downstairs, and we have 180 members. Right, so that's 60 pages, maybe 70 in case we made some mistakes. So I've got all these pages, and I took the thread out of my sewing machine and I just sewed across them. I perforated them, right?
Right. Oh my God.
Yeah, so that she could just fold them and tear them off, you know?
Well, that's what women did then when you had to improvise, right?
You had to be creative and like you said, improvise. That's amazing.
Yeah, so you don't stop. You never stop and think, well, we can't do this, we can't do this. I don't think that's for the entrepreneurial psyche. I think it's how do we do this? How do we do that? So you don't see it as a barrier, you see it as an opportunity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, it made perfect sense to me to remove the thread from my sewing machine.
That's very cool.
And perforate the paper.
Very cool, honestly, I love it.
It is cool. I remember sitting next to Donna at one of the business women's meetings, and I think it was one of my first meetings, and I thought, wow, this is great. But if anybody asked me to make muffins or cookies or tarts, I'm out of here. Like, you know, because never been to a women's group that they weren't asking for something like that. I remember speaking to a women's institute and asking people what their names were. They would say, I'm Mrs. John Richards, I'm Mrs. Bob Brown, I'm Mrs. So-and-so. They gave their husband's name. They didn't even have an identity. Yeah. And so just
but that's what Mrs. means.
But that,
the wife of.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're not going to ever say Mrs. Barb Richards, because then you're the wife of Barb Richards if you use Mrs., right?
Correct.
That's the whole Ms. thing.
Okay. So on that topic, you clearly have very supportive husbands. Yeah. In what way did they support you while you built your careers? What did they do? Like, because they both had their own identities and they worked. So how did they support you as a supportive husband?
I think that one of the things that I learned as an auctioneer, talking to the wife of a very well-known auctioneer and she would talk about all the things that she does. And I went, I need a wife. I was thinking, wow, this is great. But then I realized that I had given birth to the perfect person, because I would have this idea, and then Krista would say, and just how are we going to get there, Mom? Because she was like Donna, she wanted to get all the details ready and do all of those sorts of things. And so I was the idea person, and she would make it all happen. And not that she didn't come up with some great ideas too. Right. But my husband was just like, you go out there and you do whatever you want to do. I umpired men's games with him. We went to auctions and things, and he just said, you do whatever you want to do, and if I can help, I will. And but I said, we fired him 3 or 4 times.
I love that.
Yeah. So he was a great support, and he would like before it became so common for men to look after the women. Well, I might be working at the jail in the evening, and he'd be home with the kids and that sorts of things. I got a frantic phone call at the jail asking how you ice a cake that's still jiggling.
No. You gotta give him E for effort. At least he was trying.
Yeah, he was. And so I could not have done what I did without my husband and my family. And I want to say that COVID has made me appreciate that so much more, about the caring of my family and how much I depend on them and depend on my husband. I have got to know my husband better in this time period than I ever knew him before. And it's been, let me tell you, it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Very cool. And
Yeah,
what about you, Donna?
I've worked with a lot of women starting businesses, and the biggest problem, if they have a problem with their partner, the biggest problem they have is the partner will say no, or it can't be done, or look at these job ads you might respond to. So that there, it's not a lack of digging in and helping you do something, it's a lack of believing
in you
that it's going to be possible, you know. And because Ivor and I celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary this summer.
Congrats.
Happy anniversary.
Isn't that a little miracle? Anyway, but we when we got married in 1970, we rewrote our wedding vows, first of all. And that wasn't common. Usually the minister would stand there and say, you're going to love, honor, and obey. And we said, no, we're going to love and honor and support each other always in our work.
Love it.
And that was a really important part of, you know, so I was prepared to move to support his work. He was prepared to move to support my work. And that was just a tenet of how our marriage was going to operate. Keeping my own name, that was not done in 1970. But
true, yeah.
For me, right?
Yeah.
You've got a really good name like Donna Douglas. Why are you going to give that
for
up?
sure.
Yeah. And but it was the he has never been home much. He's in the television business. He's all over the world. And you know, this is an example, just a tiny example, but when people turn their televisions on with a remote on Boxing Day to watch the World Junior Hockey, well, that meant that for years and years and years, every Christmas, Ivor was there setting up for World Junior Hockey.
Wow.
We never had Christmas, right? So there so I can't say he was there to help with this or he was there to help with that. But the word no wasn't ever in our vocabulary. The word was, well, how do we make this happen?
Right.
You know? And if you don't want to go back to work, and of course the Banner would have, I mean, Ron Tyler said, you're not coming back. And I said, no, I'm not coming back. And I need to do something else. And you will be better off for me doing something else. And we remained, when I was looking at buying a magazine, he and I went to Michael and Marion's for lunch. And he looked at my numbers and he said, I can't even help you. The numbers are so big compared to what I was doing. And I said, well, how old were you when you bought the Banner? He said, I was 38. I said, okay, I'm 38. I'll do it.
Wow.
You know, he wasn't able to help me in a practical sense, but he was able to help by saying, yeah, I was 38. I had 3 kids. It worked. Right.
Yep.
So it's support comes in many different ways. You know, your husband can dig in and deliver things and do that kind of stuff, or they can say the word no isn't there in their vocabulary. You know, the word is, well, how can we make this happen?
Right. How do you make it work?
Yeah. Well, my husband worked shift work, so that was thrown into.
Oh, that's hard too.
Yeah. So that, you know, sometimes he'd be sleeping and the kids would have to be quiet in the evening, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that
that's hard. I've been there.
You always have challenges and you just have to make it work. And the kids were involved in helping around the house at a very early age.
But Barb, imagine if you were married to somebody who said no.
No.
Just go get a job. I work with so many women who want to start businesses who just go get a job. That's the
and then they're unhappy because they're not doing what they love. They're not, no passion.
You know, look at the potential that gets shut down by that kind of a response. Whether, and in most cases, when I teach business plan courses, I say this to people all the time: do not discuss your idea with your spouse. Don't discuss it, because what they see is you're no longer going to bring in the mortgage payment. They're scared. don't talk to them about it till you've got your business plan done and your numbers in order and you can see the potential and you're able to say, by month 6, I'm going to be I'll be making money. By month 11, I will have paid off what I've lost. By year 2, I'm going to be in a profit, and here's what I'll be able, then your spouse is going to be more open. But to say, I'm going to start a business, there's, and especially if they're not self-employed, then they're just scared. So we have to sort of look at it from all sides.
Right. Going back to the kids, anything that you would feel like that you've got any guilt over of not maybe missing something that the kids were doing, and because your work took you, that, sometimes work takes priority over a soccer game or something because of the client. Any guilt that you harbor from back in the day when the kids were younger?
I don't think I have any regrets. I think that we did everything we possibly could with the children, and my husband loves watching them play sports. He was always there. Whenever he could be there, he would be there. And then for some of them, I involved them with me. My daughter Karen played ball when I played ball, and she went on to play volleyball and do all of those sorts of things. But my little guy, he didn't want to be in sports. Little guy's Kevin, he's
he's not so little anymore.
But he didn't want to be in sports, and my husband had waited for the son to come along who was going to be the sports guy, right? And he was up in the kitchen making plaid cookies. Like, he would take make it different colors and always be creative. It was the girls who were involved in things, and we tried to always be involved with them as much as we could. And I would make sure that I spent time with every one of them on an individual basis too, even if it was just to go shopping with me, just one at a time.
Yeah, I did that also. It's funny, Barb, we never talked about any of them, but there's so much similarity. Once Emily came along, Benji had me totally to himself for 6 years. And so I used to take Thursday nights, and Thursday nights were his. And right after school, he could choose what we were going to do. We did incredible things. We bought a $100 canoe, and we took that. We paddled under the 400. We paddled out to Shanty Bay. We took picnics. I took him into the city of Barrie, and Ken Peck gave him a map of every park in Barrie, and we played at every park in Barrie, and then wrote about how it could be improved. And then he took his report back and gave it to Mr. Peck. And so but sure, I miss things there, but I don't feel guilty about it.
No, I don't feel guilty.
I'm sure there's probably a lot of women right now with everything with the pandemic that
well, lots of issues right now around the pandemic. But and Kris, I bet you would say this too. When you're self-employed, you can generally make it to Christmas pageants and that kind of thing, because you get to choose which 100 hours a week you're going to work.
I've never.
It will be 100 hours, but
I've never missed a thing for my children, and I don't regret saying no to a client to be there for my kids, because my kids were always my first and
I just developed a way. I would say, I have a commitment at 1 that day. I never said I have to be at my
no, me either.
I have a commitment at 1, but I could do this at 3:30 if that would work for you. So you develop ways to make it work.
I think for me, I had a wonderful role model. My mother was self-employed as a mail carrier, and so she delivered mail, but she was so talented in so many different ways. And I just never thought that women couldn't do anything that they wanted to do. I never thought they couldn't, never even thought there would be any barriers. So I went on in unknowing, not even expecting rejection of any kind. And if there was rejection or men wanting to do things or whatever, I just dealt with it just like Donna did. And we never thought about it. But I know that women today have a lot on their plate, and COVID has added so much more to their plate. I can't imagine being home and trying to school the kids and do all those sorts of things for kids, taking lessons and have your Zoom. I don't know how they do it.
Like on top of helping your kids with their virtual learning, you're also on Zoom meetings with clients, and it's just crazy what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more difficult. I think you're balancing a lot more balls in the air. You know, it's the first thing I know I do when I get on a Zoom is I apologize if my dogs are going to bark. I don't have young children anymore. And the comment back is usually, well, that's okay if my 2-year-old shows up on screen. And I'm like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. We all have to adapt and understand that now we're all working from home. There are going to be, you know, interruptions, and you can't stress over it. You just have to let it go, let it roll with it, right?
Well, those are the personalities that will be the winning ones, the ones that can roll with it.
Yeah, I guess.
Remember the guy on TV this year whose kid walked in the door? He was a high political person, and he was doing his thing on Zoom, and the kid walked in.
Oh, I did see that.
And we all went, yay, he's human.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Well, I think women have a whole different set of things that they need to handle and juggle. And you're right, Kris. I think you even have more balls to keep in the air than anyone, and certainly a woman who is just starting out, trying to develop her own business or just work in a field that they love. They've got so much to do and so many responsibilities. I don't know how they do it. I'm glad I was in the age bracket that I was in, because I think that I had it pretty easy compared with women today.
So
and we didn't have the
you...
technology, you know. Yeah.
What advice would you give women going forward that are just either starting out or maybe in their first, 5 years of their business? What advice would you give them?
I would suggest that they think about what would make the best them, what would make them happy, what would make them feel fulfilled, and what are their skills and talents, because we don't have all the same skills and talents. Mm-hmm. And how can you utilize that? And then it would be like, well, it's only a dream until you start to plan. And then Donna, has all of those plans and all of those sorts of things with everyone. I think that it's only a dream until you make it happen. So whether you're an entrepreneur within an industry, working for someone else, because people are entrepreneurs working.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah. And then there are the people who are starting their own business. And I think that I don't know of a time that has been more tough for small business owners, male or female, than what's been happening lately. Look at, the back in the gray zone, and we're this and we're that. I heard somebody say they just ordered thousands of dollars worth of groceries, and now they weren't going to be able to use them. And now what did they do? Because we're locked down again. So it's a whole different challenge. I think I'm grateful that I grew up when I did, and that I was in business when I was, because I just admire the women who are out there now, people like you, Kris, and my daughter, Krista, and everybody who's out there and working and doing things. It's just absolutely amazing. And I think if you want it to happen, you need to make it happen. And Donna, you'll have your answer.
I think the most important thing is to honor yourself, actually, to honor what's important and to honor your skills, to not get waylaid doing something that you don't want to do. And but I think the second thing is to have a mentor friend, somebody who you can tap into, or who believes in you, and who you can go to, because it's very isolating. And just because we don't have Business Women's Council, you need some.
Maybe we can bring it back.
Well, I would be thrilled, but to have that one or two people that you can meet with and bounce ideas off of, and listen to them recall something and then laugh about it, and talk about what they learned. And I was talking to a business owner this week, actually, a woman, and she said, I'm feeling like I have to hire somebody. I'm so busy. I'm sole proprietor, and I'm so busy, and I feel like I have to hire. And I said, well, what are you thinking? She said, well, I'm thinking that I'll find somebody who does what I do and share my workload. And I said, well, I'm going to be really mouthy about this and say, don't do that. Yeah. Make a list of absolutely everything you love to do in your business and draw a circle around it and protect that for nobody. Keep that for yourself. And then take a look at your whole life, not just your business life, but your whole life, and make a list of all the stuff you don't like to do. That's who you hire.
Laundry, cleaning, laundry,
free up.
grocery shopping. Marty, Heather.
Well, precisely though, free up your time to do what you're good at and what you love and what feeds you, you know, psychologically, and hire out that other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, hire somebody to clean for whom cleaning is passion. So
Yeah.
you're helping her business, and at the same time, your own business is going to benefit because you'll keep your image and your brand and your way of doing things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So have a support system that you believe in, who believes in you, not
Right.
necessarily just your partner or your in-laws who say, oh, we think you're wonderful, but somebody who actually understands your business and who can kind of be there for and with you.
Right.
And then really understand what you love about your business and do not give that part up.
Good advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I know both of you are, we're going to say retired, but I think that entrepreneurs really never, ever retire. I think we just, move our focus onto something else. What are both of you doing in your retirement, if you want to call it, to keep yourself busy?
Well, Senior Wish, I've had some health concerns over the last couple of years. So Senior Wish is now being run by a board of directors, and they let me know what's happening. Krista's still involved. And I would like to say that my granddaughter, her daughter, is involved in the auction business too, but she won't stay in the auction business, I don't think. So we're coming to an age where Krista's saying, what's going to be my future and what should I be doing and who should be doing those sorts of things. And I'm always there for her to listen and to do things and to support her. But for me, we started doing memory books with the Senior Wish Association. And I thought, well, I could write my own memory book. And then as I was writing my memory book, I thought I should write a book. I should write a book because I have some things that happened to me that I know never happened ever to anyone else. Kris, I shared some with you the other day.
Yeah, you did.
And you said, "Oh, I'd read that book." So Donna, you're going to get a phone call from me. Say, where do I start?
Okay, so we know where Donna is going to be in her retirement, helping Barb write a book.
Yeah, well, we know also that did you see Donna's face when you said you should start up the Women in Business again?
I know. I saw a little light go off.
How would I do that now? Just
well. I probably would be able to buy pre-perforated receipts. I don't.
You can leave your sewing machine.
Yeah.
But there's retirement. You just shift. You really shift your energy in other ways. And you started Seniors Wish long before you retired.
Yes.
Right. It just gives you more time, and I brought one of my Hootables in and put it up there on my desk today because that's my little project in retirement. And it's tiny in comparison to what you've been doing. But the making and selling of these owls, and I haven't gotten sophisticated about it at all. And I need to find another retail location because unfortunately the Camp Hill store had to close. So and with the pandemic on, any retailer is not going to want to sell owls that aren't going to make them any money.
Right. Yeah.
But when right now we're supporting our fourth student, a full tuition support all the way through tuition.
Wow.
And that's a good thing, but it's little, but still that's 4 people that wouldn't have had their educations paid for, right?
Not little, it's awesome.
It is awesome.
And Donna, Krista's in the room with me here. And when you said you needed a retail place for your owls, he's going to give you a call because you could sell them by auction. She would do them free for you and you would be able to sell your owls and get the money from that. We'd also have them here and people could pick them up.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Wow, look at that.
That's why we have the next generation.
That's why we still have connections.
Well, and I am doing a bit of business consulting you know, when people call and say, can I hire you to do this? Or could you write a business plan for me? But I'm not out actively looking for work. I'm just, I'm waiting for a hip. And so I'm pretty nasty sometimes because I'm hurting, but that's going to happen soon. I have to tell you though, here's a little positive thing. I got in to see my mom for the first time in a year last Friday.
Nice.
And she's in long-term care and she has Alzheimer's. So she doesn't really know. She knows I matter, but she doesn't have a clue who I am. Anyway, so I took a couple of cupcakes because I knew she'd lick the icing off the cupcakes. And because, you know, her meals are like lumps of, here's your salmon sandwich, puree.
Yeah.
You know? So we're sitting at her little desk in her room and she's sitting in her wheelchair and she doesn't have glasses or hearing aid or, you know, she's in great shape. It just, she doesn't get enough exercise. So she's in a wheelchair. But anyway, we're sitting there and I said to her, do you think in 2 years, we'll be sitting at this desk, looking out at that patio, eating cupcakes and celebrating your 100th birthday?
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, darn tootin'.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah,
I do love it.
That's the attitude, you know? So
Yeah.
I would say if I look at all three of us and the women who are going to be at this virtual luncheon, who hopefully will be inspired by the people at their table, you know, or however you're going to organize it. But we can still continue to support and inspire each other, even though we're having to do it technologically. And I think about the women who were out there fighting like mad so that we got the vote. You know, we've stepped on the bodies of a lot of women as we've come along, and we owe really a backward glance and a thank you to them, because they're the ones that opened this door and made it possible, you know?
You're right.
Well, I can tell you that I am very much awe-inspired by both of you. You know, it's a tough go being a woman entrepreneur, and I know my own, you know, business that I'm in is a very much male predominating industry, and you have to have the mindset that you're just not going to let an obstacle stop you, and you're just going to, you know, continue what you want to help people and change people's lives in whatever the business that you're in, whether it's making owls or, you know, doing an auction and, you know, helping somebody with their cherished things. I think we all need to just be very strong and rely on other people, rely on other women, talk to other business owners and work together. Collaboration is the key to, I think, a successful business. That's my personal opinion.
Wow, that's a creativity, collaboration, and we need one more C word to give that a theme, you know, to brand it. But I think we could fly with that.
We could.
Collaborate, create,
and caring. No.
And care. Yeah.
Caring.
I like that.
I like that.
Don't even think about how much you can do for them so they know you care.
That's right.
Right. And especially in our business. So, and any business, they want to know that you care about what it is that you're doing for them at that very moment. But I do want to jump in and say, Kris, you're a legend in your own time. You remind me of Donna and I, much younger. And Krista reminds me of, you know, like with you. And I just feel so happy when I talk to people like you and to young people who have that drive and that passion and still finds time to do things for the community and for all the people that live in our community. On behalf of the people, I'm sure you never get thanked enough. And Kris, I want to thank you for everything that you're doing out there in the community. And Donna, thank you for everything that you did and for being my friend. And I just think it's wonderful opportunities that are coming up, and I love you both.
Awesome.
Wow, you are wonderful.
Well, on that note, I'm going to continue with our closing here, and I'd like to thank both of you for sharing with us today. What a privilege it is for me to be here with you and to be able to hear firsthand all of the accounts of what you both have done in helping women and changing business owners going forward. I would like to thank all of you again for joining us today, and I encourage you to tune in for Friday's Purposeful panel featuring Angela Baldwin, Baldwin Planning and Consulting, Claudine Cousins from Empower Simcoe, Shaq Edwards from Shaq's World Community Center, Peggy Hill, Remax Hallmark Peggy Hill Group Realty. Moderator will be Stephanie Schlichter from Invest Barrie at the City of Barrie. Keep an eye on the Barrie Chamber social channels for a number of highlights of women in business in Barrie, as well as Her Story video series filmed by Baker Studios. And on that note, I'd like to thank again our 2021 Women in Business sponsors, Scotiabank, Grant Thornton LLP, the City of Barrie, Invest Barrie, TD Canada Trust, Electra Utilities, Siva Creative, Big 101.1, Fresh 93.1 Radio, Rock 95, Cool FM, Barrie 360, Barriston Law, Downtown Barrie, and Baker Studio. Thank you all so very much. And on that note, thank you, ladies, one more time.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kris. Good to see you, Barb.
Good to see you too, Donna.